Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So a couple of people mentioned an interest in talking about evoking emotions and how to make emotions come through in writing, so I figured we could have a little talk about it. So as usual, all the things I'm about to say are a combination of what I learned in college and my personal opinions, okay? So I'm gonna reiterate the thing that music is like poetry in a lot of ways, because sometimes it's just about taste and preference, okay? So if I like something and you don't like it, or the other way around, it's fine. Okay, so today when we talk about feeling in writing, it's gonna be writing generally, so it can be fiction, poetry, whatever kind of thing that's not academic or research, pretty much. Anything that needs an emotional description. So the first thing I would advise when you want to describe a feeling so then you can evoke the feeling in the reader is to start, sorry, I have notes on my computer. It's to start with something simple and then dig from there. So what that means is, for example, if I want to talk about a girl and she's sad. Okay, so sad has a lot of subcategories. Why is she sad? Is she sad for no apparent reason? Or no reason she can determine? Okay, so that's melancholy. That's a different kind of sad, and it's a more specific kind of sad. And then, what do I connect melancholy to? So visually in my head, for some reason, when I think of melancholy, I think of a huge field with wind sweeping through it with pastel blue flowers. That's what I think of when I think of melancholy. So the thing is this, once you start digging and then you find your word, my word is melancholy, for example, you have to think of what you connect that to. It could be anything, and it could be super abstract even, like melancholy might make you think of just white, blurry white. You know, like it doesn't have to be anything necessarily pretty, but it's something that you have a connection with, because when you have a connection with, emotions will come out a lot more organically, because it's very obvious, at least in my eyes, when someone describes something and you can tell that they don't really believe it, or they haven't felt it, or it just doesn't seem genuine. So dig and find your connections. Second thing is using descriptions that might not seem to apply. Now, I know this is like a weird thing, but when you have an emotion, and let's say that I'm still here with melancholy, you can describe that in a lot of ways that are not necessarily related to melancholy. For example, you can talk about sensory effects or spatial effects. So by that I mean sensory-wise, like of feelings I could feel on my body. Melancholy, like I said before, relates to wind and just like space. So spatially, I'm positioning it as huge space and you're lonely within this space, okay? So she's in the middle, or mentally, she's in the middle of a field, and there's wind, and that's what she feels on her skin. And from that, she gets goosebumps. So these small sensory details can really, really help drive an emotion home, because more likely than not, a person will identify in some sense with the emotion. Like, I can identify with being lonely and being cold in the fucking wind, so melancholy really resonates when I describe it that way. Whatever way you choose to describe it not only in terms of visuals, but also in terms of your body. Like, for example, when I'm angry, spatially, I feel like everything is claustrophobic and small, and I feel like I'm in a tight space and I want to fucking lash out. So when I'm describing someone angry, I could say she felt like she was stuck between two walls and couldn't move, because that, to me, really brings out the idea of frustration and anger. So that's what I mean when I say use descriptions that might not seem to, use descriptions that might not seem to apply, because really, those descriptions that don't seem to apply most of the time actually have a lot to do with it, with the mental connections that people have. Third of all, listening to music that you know evokes feelings in you. So sometimes when you're writing, you might not be familiar with the kind of feeling you're writing about, especially if you're writing a story with a character and they're in a situation you've never been in. Sometimes listening to music that evokes a certain feeling in you can be really helpful in imagining what the character would feel. For example, if you're writing a spy novel and this girl is under pressure because someone's like trying to kill her, hopefully you haven't been in that position, but maybe there's a song or a book or a movie that gives you this feeling of extreme pressure and fear, and you need to tune into that. So sometimes you need the extra help of something. For example, when I want to exude deep sadness, unfortunately it's not that hard for me to think of that, but a lot of the times I'll listen to music that I know makes me get goosebumps and makes me feel a sadness that I don't know where it's coming from, but it's so deep that I'm like, holy shit, and I can pour that out onto a piece of paper. So that's an important thing too. So for example, if you were writing that spy book and the girl is running away from killers, maybe a good thing would be to watch your favorite movie that has that as a running theme and think of how you feel and try and put yourself in the position of that person, and then you can kind of transpose what you were feeling onto your character, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying really is to refer to other sources to kind of get your mind running. Don't just sit in an empty room and think that it's just gonna come right out. Like, use all the sources you have, because most of the time it's a lot easier when something already gets the ball rolling for you. So my last point is to use the correct feeling and use a rich one. Now, I briefly mentioned this in my poetry video. Now, I'm gonna put 3 links in the description box, and these links are pretty much charts with feelings. So it'll have positive feelings and negative feelings, and it'll subdivide them. Okay, so for example, one of the things that is linked is an emotion wheel. And the cool thing is that it has sections. So for example, when you're trying to say that someone is angry, it subdivides into a bunch of sections, and it's like let down. And if you're let down, maybe you feel betrayed or maybe you feel resentful. What about if you're angry and critical? Maybe you're skeptical or maybe you're dismissive. So the thing is, picking these different words makes all the difference, because effectively, no emotion is simple enough to be sad or mad. There's always something more to it. And the more specific you are, the more likely it is to evoke emotion in the reader, because they'll have had that feeling. Most of the feelings we talk about in poems and in books, someone has had to some degree. And if you describe it accurately, the person who's reading it is going to be like, oh, I remember that time when X, Y, or Z happened. Anyways, remember that the links to the help sheets with the emotions will be in the description, and as usual, thank you guys for watching, and if you have anything you want to see from me next, comment and I will do it.